Hello, everybody. So it's time for the Q&A. These days, people call these Q&R because it's question and response. You might not necessarily get an answer, but you will get a response. So where has my chat box gone? All right. So hopefully the questions are coming. And gosh, some of them are quite long. Just a reminder to try and keep them short. So let's see. Okay. And also I have a few questions from the room. So let's begin. For the past few years, creative writing has been an integral part of my Dhamma practice. After hearing your teachings, especially regarding no talking, I've been contemplating how to adjust my writing to better align with the art of disappearing. Do you have any advice on this?
One thing you may try is that when you write, don't plan anything. Just put your pen. Actually, you don't write on pens and papers anymore. It's usually on computer. Just start writing and just see where it leads to. Let the story or let the event sort of drive how you write. In other words, don't plan and intend to put a masterpiece, on the computer. Just let it go, let it flow. And then sometimes what comes out is kind of amazing. Actually, I remember I promised I would try and find this for you, Ayachanda. Many years ago, I was invited to write an article on enlightenment for the inquiring mind, I think a US journal. And so what I did, I just turned on my computer. Had a very peaceful mind, and I just wrote something. Took about half an hour, 20 minutes. Many sort of nice, funny stories about enlightenment, and just how many people feel they have enlightenment, but they're not. They just want to be so much. And then I sent it off to the editors of Inquiring Mind in the United States. And I said to them, I said, oh, this is just a bit of fun and games. And so you don't have to publish this. I'll do something serious later. And they emailed back straight away saying, no, we want this one. Because they enjoyed it. It's making a good point how many people want to be enlightened so much that they bend the truth, often without them realizing it.
Okay, I'm going to take one from our little group here. Can I bypass relaxing the body and go straight to the beautiful breath? Sometimes when I body scan, I overthink and begin fixating on bodily feelings, making them a problem. So I would say yes, because it's not really your choice. If the beautiful breath is in your mind, as soon as you sit down, then your lotus is already open on the beautiful breath petal. And the purpose of the relaxing the body has already been done. So in a retreat situation, especially, you're probably very relaxed already. And the main reason we begin with the body is to develop mindfulness, to really establish strong mindfulness and an awareness, not only of our body, but our emotional world through the body, and learn to relax, learn what kindness is by practicing kindness and mindfulness on the body, because the body gives very instant feedback. You can immediately know whether you're being kind or whether you're being forceful and controlling and tense. So if you're already in the beautiful breath, no problem at all. Just carry on from there. Is it possible to become fault-finding about nimittas? Probably yes, but not if they become really, really bright. Only if they're just preliminary, they're not really strong enough, and that means you've not really overcome the hindrance of ill will just yet. So if you have still a trace of ill will in the mind, it will find fault with anything, even a lovely nimitta. But of course, the stronger the nimitta gets, the more beautiful, the more delightful, the fault finding will vanish, and you'll just focus on the beauty. But it's a practice. And I remember Ajahn Brahm teaching this story about learning to look for the beauty in everything in your daily life. And that the higher practice, one of the normal practices, for me anyway, is the gum knot. there's loads and loads of gum nuts in Australia. Here you could say the acorn, or I don't know, some leaf from a tree that's a little bit raggedy, not the most beautiful leaf, but you anyway look at it and notice its beauty. The more you look, the more you see. And the advanced class on that, as I remember you describing, was to go into a rubbish bin and get a really filthy piece of rubbish out and find the beauty in that. So if you can do that, then you can certainly find the beauty in a nimitta. Okay, there is a little bit more here, but maybe I'll give that one to you, Ajahn. Do you like this one?
What is it here?
I get confused between allowing things to unfold or develop by themselves, as opposed to brightening with metta or intentionally stabilizing. Is the latter getting involved and controlling?
Not really. You think you're choosing, but you're not. It's a natural response. Sometimes you've programmed your mindfulness, it's a bit dull, just a little bit more metta, and it just happens. So don't think too much about it, just let it happen.
Yeah, it's probably the case that the instructions are working. You've heard that there is a stage called brightening. You know about metta, and you know that the nimitta, to be useful, to take you into a jhana, has to be still. So most probably that's the conditioning that's working rather than the doer. Okay, this is an easy one. Can we get a copy of Ajahn Brahm's translation of this sutta, which I think is the Majjhima Nikaya 128? I don't know if there is one, but you can basically change the word concentration to stillness and you're almost there. I think that was the main difference that I noticed when we read it out compared to Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. So but that's a very important difference. Stillness as opposed to concentration for samadhi. Okay. I won't do that one, Ajahn. I'll give you that one about complete enlightenment. Okay, dear Ajahns, thank you for the wonderful retreat and teachings. During my very first meditation, I saw soft, beautiful, shimmering lights in colors which do not exist in everyday life. Together with the image of lights arose the feeling of safety and unconditional love, warmth, lightness, and joy. These feelings, especially safety and love, were so profound. I never felt them in daily life. However, they were very familiar to my mind. I know that the mind had been in that magical space before and recognized it. It felt like coming home. Was this a nimitta? As my practice continues, the lights change, and every time it's slightly different when they show up. Sometimes it feels like somebody turned on light in the dark room. The mind enters an empty bubble with nothing. The nothingness feels peaceful and liberating. So yes, these are kinds of nimittas, and they're very beautiful nimittas. The safety and unconditional love is a really beautiful aspect of deep practice. And there are so many different experiences here that I would say just go for it. The basic advice from the Buddha is that if your practice is leading to peace, leading to insight, and leading to enlightenment, then you're on the right track. So don't analyze it too much, I would say. I'm going a bit quickly because there's a lot of questions. Is that
Yes,
okay?
fine, yes.
All right, here we go. This is a big one. Dear Ajahn, can you please describe the process of attaining full enlightenment through the material and immaterial jhanas through stream winning, sakadagami, anagami, and arahat? Thank you.
Okay. I mean, there's a whole Tripitaka trying to explain that, so just keep it simple. In other words, you're letting go more and more and more, and you are disappearing with that. So you're vanishing. One of the nicest little books of my teachings was called The Art of Disappearance. And when you call it the art of disappearance, straight away it emphasizes that this thing we call enlightenment is kind of noticed by the fact of how much you disappear and you vanish. And so you don't own anything. You can allow things to disappear because you're not holding on to anything. And so you just do your meditations, and the meditations become automatic, get easier and easier and easier and easier and easier. And as they get easier and easier and easier, and you become more automatic, you can understand just how. Just when you complete the Eightfold Path, and then the samadhi, the stillness happens. That's why the Buddha called out the path. And then there's a sense of seeing things as they truly are. after you emerge from the jhanas, you can see things as they truly are so easily. And you get lots and lots and lots and lots of insights. And you don't have to worry where you are on the path, what you have to do next. This is not like going to a university and getting degree upon degree upon degree. You get your bachelor's first, and then your master's, and then, oh, sorry, if you're a bhikkhuni mistress. Is that right? No, I'm doing naughty. Well, of course, thanks, it's masters. Why can't I call other things mistress degrees?
Many get mistresses.
No, they don't. But anyway, then PhD, and you all know what PhD means, I hope. Permanent head damage. That was a guy who actually got a degree in PhD in psychology. He's a big teacher over in one of the universities in Malaysia. But anyhow, all of these titles, and sometimes what are these? Instead of actually accumulating knowledge, we try to let go of some attachment to things, get more empty, more peaceful, more free. And that's a much better way of describing what enlightenment is. So just get started, get a jhana or two, and then go from there.
Awesome. What was I going to say? But Ajahn Brahmali has permanent head damage.
Yeah, this is honorary.
Honorary permanent head damage. What an honour. He got an honorary PhD from which one? Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok for his work on the Vinaya. Translating the Vinaya, which is great because Ajahn Brahmali, of course, has made it very clear through his understanding and work that bhikkhuni ordination is entirely valid. So
yes,
it's a very good one. This is just a done question. It's just like there's no need to talk further about it. So his honorary head damage is well worthwhile. Anyway, thank you for the precious teachings on this wonderful retreat. I really relate to the excessive energy mentioned in today's sutta. Before discovering meditation, people would often ask if I was on the gear. I wasn't. I'm glad. But now I see the suffering this kind of restless energy brings. I've been learning to devalue it and gradually find balance, though it's still a challenge. I cried when I first joined Ven Candá's online community, just from feeling so welcomed. And again yesterday during metta practice, when I was finally able to forgive someone I've been trying to for a long time. It was deeply powerful. But when the crier came, stillness vanished. Do you have any tips on working with the emotions? Allow them to come. They're healing. The crying is because of something that you're letting go of, and it's a kind of softness. I often feel that tears are a kind of melting of anger, or melting of control, a melting of holding on to something, and that's where we get all soft and gooey. And often that comes when you feel safe. So the fact that you're feeling welcomed, you're not having to run around to try and make everything happen, the restlessness is subsiding, your heart is getting soft. And quite often this is a part of the process towards stillness. A really nice sutta actually that I was reading recently in Bhante Sujatā's book, what's it called? The Two Messengers. A swift pair of messengers.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a sutta in there that says that samatha practice is basically purifying the emotional aspects of the mind, whereas insight practice, or let's say practices that start to diminish and eventually uproot delusion, purify more. I mean, it says kind of the cognitive aspects, but I don't think that's what the Buddha meant. He meant the kind of distortions of view. So the samadhi process I found is quite an emotional one. And I think it's a beautifully emotional one. So just allow those emotions to be and make peace with them. It's part of the course.
Yes, if you can sort of almost cry out of joy when you see what you did in the toilet bowl. I mean, that's just amazing what you can just find joy with.
Thank you for that addition.
It is true that one thing that we think we should get rid of all emotions, but you have the emotions which are the positive emotions. You know, things like the metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. Those are beautiful emotions, and sometimes they do bring tears to your eyes.
But any emotions should not be stigmatized. May all emotions be happy and welcome.
Yeah, but after a while, the negative emotions which cause damage to others, that gets less and less and less and
Let's
less.
say the defilements.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the wonderful retreat. The online format is ideal and very practical for me. Excellent. I have a question. Ajahn Brahm mentioned in connection with his itchy nose that it might have been Mara. Who or what exactly is Mara? Is Mara something within us, or is it considered a separate entity?
Mara is supposed to be a separate entity who tries his best to keep controlling people. So the worst thing you can do for Mara is get out of control and become enlightened, become free. And that's one of the reasons why that Mara was trying to convince the Buddha he was not enlightened. And when the Mara just gave up and said, okay, I admit it, you are enlightened, Mara went to the Buddha and said, just take it easy, chill out, don't need to do any work, don't need to teach. Teaching is very hard work. And the Buddha said, no. He said, I will eventually just disappear, but before I disappear, enter what's called parinibbana, which is complete, absolute, total sort of cessation. Before that occurs, I will make sure that I've established these 4 communities. One of those communities, the Buddha said, is not going to disappear until he's established a thriving, sustainable community of bhikkhunis. And the bhikkhus, lay men, lay women. Now, we often say that, but that's one of the missions of the Buddha. He wouldn't become enlightened, he wouldn't sort of stop teaching, he wouldn't sort of disappear into parinibbana until he's actually given a good foundation to Buddhism for the future.
Yeah.
Mara had to accept that. It's also one of the reasons why that when we found a city centre in Perth for our community, the city centre was in the suburb of Nollamara. And anyone who knows how things are pronounced or the speech in places like Malaysia, we call that no la mara. You add the la on there, it's an intensifier. In a place like Malaysia and Singapore, is that good la?
Yeah, la.
Good enough la. He's really sort of intensifying it. So no la mara was saying to Mara, no la mara.
Yeah. Just a point to Manoi, there's 2 questions here that are identical with different names. Could you just check? Number 15 and 16. I was going to write it, but I'll just ask you. Okay, so there's the next question. There's a lot of questions here, Ajahn. We need to go a little bit quickly. Okay. This one's quite easy. How to practice sitting cross-legged for a long time? If I sit cross-legged for more than 15 to 20 minutes, I feel more and more discomfort here and there. I know I can sit on a chair or lie down, but sitting cross-legged is very practical if I want to meditate in the forest or a park. Well, you don't have to meditate cross-legged even in a forest or a park. You can sit on a log, or you can lie down in a forest or a park. Sure. But if you really want to, you could take a little fold-out chair. If you really want to sit longer cross-legged, it's just a matter of practice, but not pushing your body, being kind to your body. You can do some yoga, some stretching, and gradually get used to sitting on the floor. But don't try and make that an obstacle to you at all. Okay. Relationship question, that's for you, Ajahn, the expert on relationships. I can do it if you don't want. Not that I have many relationships, only with my lovely nuns and my lovely teacher. I know I have unhappiness inside me, however, I know I have unhappiness inside me. However, I'm not sure how much is due to my relationship. Since finding the spiritual path, I've changed a lot and want different things from life. My husband isn't drawn to the spiritual path at all. We both feel lonely and unhappy in our relationship, but he very much wants to stay together. Although we've had lots of therapy, worked on a lot of things, I still don't know if this relationship is right. Ajahn Brahm, you said something about a relationship needing to be just good enough. How can I tell if I should stay in this good enough relationship? We have 2 young children and have created a stable, loving home for them. I feel a huge responsibility for the suffering that may be caused to my children and husband if I decide that I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. It occupies my mind most of the time and I feel very stressed.
Okay. This is where, I'm responsible for some relationships because when people get married, they ask me to do the blessing for them. And that's when I start telling them that a relationship. I love this little teaching simply because many of the guests in the ceremony, they first of all look at me and think that I'm crazy and monk, and what on earth is their daughter or their son asking me to talk about marriages for? But then afterwards they get it and they thank me afterwards. I tell them, in a relationship, you must never ever think of yourself. In a relationship, you must never ever think of your partner. And that's the one which gets the relations. They say, what's he talking about? Was that a misstatement? You must never think of your partner. They just got married. Of course they're thinking about each other. I said, no, that's wrong. Never think of your partner. Never think of yourself. You just have to think about us. So you don't sort of distinguish between you, your partner, and your kids, or anyone else involved in that relationship. It's all about us. So
Which includes you.
Yeah, absolutely. Us is you, your partner, and your kids, even your parents, whoever else is involved in it. You think about us. That makes life much more easy to make decisions.
Can I just add one thing, which is to
Only
try
one.
to remove. I could. I could do 3.
Okay.
Which is to try to remove any burden of guilt by recognizing that if it isn't right for you, it's not right for him. And if it isn't right for either of you, it's not good for the children either. That's an idea. I mean, it might be that this is a phase and things will change, but if it isn't, and if you decide that it isn't, it's not only for you that it isn't, because neither of you will be happy, and the kids will pick up on that as well. That's one thought. What do you think about that?
You want to know that sometimes children who are a little bit older than just 2 or 3, who are like, starting sort of 12, 13, 14, sometimes you talk to them and they say, I don't know why mummy and daddy could stand each other for such a long time. Actually, we're very happy that they are kindly separating because it's causing so much problems for them. Please talk to your children. I always found that children are much smarter when you talk honestly to them and straightforward to them than their parents give them credit for.
Yeah. Someone very close to me actually had this conversation. The kids were a bit older, but they basically said it's better when, well, this is a different situation, but they basically said it's better when daddy's not living here.
Yeah.
They love their father.
Yeah.
But that's how they felt. I also think it's sometimes better if there is going to be a split to do it when it's amicable and not to wait until it becomes so difficult to talk to each other, so difficult that you can't even, maintain kind of a civil conversation. But I suppose the answer will come eventually and you'll know when it's the right time.
I remember one family, they were both really nice Buddhists, and they split up. And then they had one daughter, and their daughter just really didn't like it when their mother and father, who are now split up, talked to each other, because their daughter had all amazing ways of getting what she wants by playing the 2 of them. And once the mum and dad actually talked together, or she lost a lot of special privileges.
Anyway, good luck. But I think it's common that the woman takes most of the emotional burden of it, actually. So, yeah. Thank you for your teachings. I've heard Ajahn Brahm talking about samatha, vipassana, and loving kindness going up meditation mountain, and the three are always going together. I've only very recently come to Ajahn Brahm and Ven Candā, having come from a Tibetan Buddhist background. I'm wondering where I can find teachings on vipassana. I've heard you talk about insight at each end, at the end of each samatha meditation, and have found Ajahn Brahmali's teachings on the four focuses of mindfulness. But I was thinking how to practice vipassana in meditation and daily life.
We'll just make the mind very peaceful, go very still, do lots of loving kindness. And you think you're doing one thing, but you always do the other one as well. It comes along with it. You can't do one without the other. You may be focusing on samatha, but vipassana comes right behind it. So I was just do the samatha, or just do loving kindness. Vipassana will come as well.
Hello. In Ajahn Brahm's book section on mindfulness of breathing completes the four focuses. Could these be elaborated? Let's assume the nimitta is formed as a circle expanding and contracting. The color has not started to brighten. When you learn to brighten the nimitta, bring joy to the chitta as you breathe in and out. Question: how do you bring joy to the nimitta? Does this mean you take your attention off the breath and put it on the nimitta?
Well, by that time, you don't decide. Just the mind will just make that decision for you. It's so beautiful. You can't help watching it. It's like you may be just walking down the road and you see this beautiful, beautiful sunset somewhere. That draws your attention to it. You don't go searching for it. It pulls you to it. And that's not the best simile, but one simile to show you that if you are just walking, if you are just seeing the breathing, and the breathing is beautiful, and the nimitta comes up, the mind will get drawn, the attention will get drawn to this very beautiful object. It's not what you do, you don't choose. It'll be a natural process.
Yeah, it also helps if you do have a general attitude of metta and appreciation and gratitude, and you've learned to see the beauty in things. How do you settle a nimitta? So the question is, do you put your attention on your breath? Definitely not, because now the nimitta should be stabilizing on its own, so you don't need to go back to the breath. If you do, then it might disappear, or you might, if it's really moving around, you might want to stabilize a little bit by going to this very subtle breath. But again, I think it would happen naturally. Yes.
It's one of the little experiences which I had, which was really helpful. It's very easy to understand, very simplistic. But my nimitta, or the nimitta I was experiencing, was moving around a lot. And I tried to hold it still, and it just kept on moving. And just one morning, like, a guy always does, you have a shower, you wash your face, and then you shave your chin. And as I was shaving my chin, I was looking in the mirror, and kind of like insights come at all amazing times. And just been having a lot of good meditation, so the mind was ready for the insight. And said, as I was shaving with one hand, the other hand, I held the mirror still. And my image in the mirror still kept on moving. And then instead of holding the mirror still, I kept my head still. And what thing which was looking remained still. And then the image in the mirror became still. I realized my mistake. I was trying to hold a nimitta still instead of your awareness being still.
Okay. Thanks for the sutta today and all the teachings. I can have still meditations with little movement of body and not much thought, but it feels heavy and dark, not in a bad way. I feel like I'm slumped over or bowed down. I don't know how to gladden my mind or if that is necessary. If I imagine light or sit straighter, then I can come out of the stillness. Maybe there's nothing to worry about.
Correct.
Ajahn Chah avoided talking about levels of attainment and meditative absorptions in order to counter spiritual materialism, the gaining mind, competitiveness, and jealousy, and keep people focused on the path. That's an excerpt from the teachings. Can focusing on nimittas and jhanas become a trap? Or is that just doubt? Can I say anything?
You go on. Now, basically, it's not a trap. After a while, if you are holding them or wanting them, then they sort of don't develop that much. But if you just let them develop by themselves, you let go more. As I was saying, just even shaving my chin, my face in the mirror one morning, that taught me how to watch a nimitta. Just don't do anything, be still. Then the nimitta becomes still. And when it becomes still, its energy starts to build. It starts to gladden all by itself. But one thing which I often say at this point, I haven't said it yet. Sometimes when you're watching a nimitta in your mind, experiencing it, sometimes the energy gets massive. Sometimes it's like looking at the sun at midday in Australia, at midday in the summertime. You think you're going to go blind, because it's so intense. But the thing is, with the nimitta, it's not a visual light. You're not seeing it with your eyes, you're experiencing it with your mind. That can be as intense as it needs to be. Don't be afraid.
Just to go for a little bit backwards on that, I would say that there's a difference between focusing overly much on the actual nimittas and jhanas or focusing more on the causes for them. And I think that's what attracted me to Ajahn Brahm's teaching, is that you were really focusing actually on the causes and what gives rise to these things, rather than having these things as an aim or as a goal. So it's really important to remember that this is all founded on sila, on, basically getting your together in your everyday life and having a bit of right view, knowing where this path is going, knowing why you're doing it, not to just go for these experiences purely because it's pleasurable, but because it's pleasurable due to ending defilements, due to overcoming hindrances that harm yourself and others, and doing the practice out of compassion for the world. I think that's very, very important. Otherwise, it can be a real kind of ugly, spiritually materialistic striving game. And I've found that there are people who fall into that and, talk about having nimittas, having jhanas, being on this stage and that stage of enlightenment. And you just know from hearing them talk that way that they haven't really understood. And it's actually embellishing a sense of self rather than dissolving it. So I think that's one of the reasons that some teachers avoid talking about them at all. But I think the way that Ajahn Brahm teaches, and hopefully I also emphasize it this way, is by focusing on the causes and yet still giving you a map. So you know how to navigate the terrain. Okay, long question. I read in Analia's book, Compassion and Emptiness, that mudita and harmony causes great merit and is an antidote for discontent. In the holy life, supporting practices of asubha and equanimity that together overcome perceptions and desire energy that fuels the hindrance of desire. It's like the sun of kindfulness sees the non-beautiful as it really is without hatred. The blue sky of equanimity disperses the desire energy that drives sensual searches. And mudita is the pure white clouds of sweet rain that nourish the practice of letting go with the source of inner happiness. Can you kindly explain the causal relationship between metta, light, kasina, perceptions of light, like Ayakema's metta visualization, the sun in the heart meditation style, and the development of nimitta and jhana? This is definitely one for you, Ajahn.
How many we got?
Can visualization of the sun in your heart as a light kasina lead to jhana? I don't know which question you want to answer there.
Okay, just that last one. Like a sun casino in your heart, can that lead to jhana? Of course it can, but it's not that which causes the jhana. It's the ability to let things be, to let go of control, to allow things to develop naturally, and just be like a observer, not a driver.
That's actually where the metta comes in, isn't it? I guess this causal relationship between metta, light, and perceptions of light.
Yes. Those are nice perceptions, very useful. And you can see there where you try and control things and try and make things happen. Who's trying to make things happen? And one of the other things I wanted to say, which is connected to the previous question rather than this one, I was always impressed with the sutta where a monk came to see the Buddha, and Ananda was the attendant of the Buddha. And this monk said, one who is enlightened never conceives, never thinks that they are better than anybody else, that they are worse than anybody else, or they're the same as anybody else. And we said, correct. And another monk came up and said the same thing. Someone who's enlightened, an arahat, never thinks they're better than anybody else, never thinks they're worse than anybody else, never thinks they're the same as anybody else. And the Buddha again said, yes. And then the Buddha turned around to his attendant Ananda and said, those are two newly experienced arahats, enlightened beings. That's how enlightened beings express to me what has happened. Not better, not worse, not the same. They've disappeared.
Dear Ajahn, I'm super curious about the superpower laser beam eyes.
Oh, yeah.
What was the purpose for the monk using it? To heal others or read minds or something else?
I don't know if you're curious about that. That's just one of the byproducts of meditation. I'm not sure why he did that. I wasn't at that meeting. I just know that that was an extremely good monk. He was the one who started off his career. He wanted to aspire to be like a hermit in the jungles. He hadn't ordained as a monk or anything, but he just sat down and started meditating. And his experience of jhana is an interesting story, simply because he just put it in a different way where you can understand this was a real jhana. That he was meditating, got very still, much of his body vanished, and then he was perceiving this star come close to his mind. And then the way he described it to me, obviously English was not his first language, and he said he married that star. Married, but it didn't mean any sensuality. Basically, he united with it. And he stayed there, for several days. And when he came out of his meditation, that he noticed the forest in which he was sitting had changed. And he checked with the villagers, and there had been a flash flood there. And where he was sitting, he was submerged for many days, basically underwater. He didn't know that. He didn't need any oxygen. He was very content there. And when he came out afterwards, he started to want to incline towards being a monastic. And that's where he ordained at Wat Bhawan. I remember sort of meeting him, talking with him, and I was very impressed with him. You could feel he had a huge amount of power. So he had developed some of those psychic abilities. And one of them was, it would only be for benefit of others, not to control or hurt or anybody. He was just a very good monk. And that's what he did. And just a lady kind of saw that. And anything which is powerful like that, and I knew that lady really well, so she wasn't sort of lying to me. Her reaction was just to get up and walk out, and not go back again.
We've got a lot of questions this evening.
Okay, come on.
In the sutta this afternoon, it said abandoning of defilements. What does abandoning mean? To me, it sounds like pushing away, and I did that for 9 years, just shortly acknowledging and then going back to the breath again. Now that doesn't feel right anymore, and my new way is to let them be as long as they want and pass away naturally. Is that what the Buddha meant by abandoning, or am I on the wrong track? So I would say that sounds good. And by abandoning, the Buddha is not meaning push them away. He's meaning understand what the causes are and abandon the causes for them so that they can't arise again. There are different causes for them. Sometimes you can use restraint. Sometimes you can cultivate the positives as a kind of antidote to the unwholesome states. So, for example, cultivating metta, or even using thoughts of loving kindness to displace, if you like, or replace thoughts of ill will. But I think it's very skillful to be able to hold them with the attitude of letting go and loving kindness, And non-ownership, like letting them be there as long as they want, is kind of acknowledging that they have a lifespan of their own and they're not under your control, and they will pass away, and you'll be observing that passing away and developing insight. So I think that is a good way to abandon. But see if you can not only notice that they abandon, but how they become abandoned by not fueling them at all. Dear Ajahns, thank you so much for these incredible teachings. I'm learning a lot. This morning you said that when a woman briefly died, she experienced a vivid vision, nimitta, and also some knowledge about the cause of her cancer, and then it cured her. I wondered about a similar thing myself. It didn't come the same way, but through reading. The cancer's incurable, but treatment's keeping it stable, and I have a good quality of life. I feel grateful for this opportunity to live a simpler, more mindful and appreciative way since the diagnosis 8 years ago. I try to be kind and compassionate to others, and I still struggle with being a people pleaser and get anxious if I think I can't or don't want to do what I think others might want me to do. Any advice?
Yes. Do what I want you to do. Please me. In other words, forget about pleasing others. Just please, if you want to do any pleasing, always do that pleasing us, all the people which are close to you, and you are part of that. So you are also a recipient of your hard work to help and care for others.
Since I got very sick 5 years ago, I've become sensitive to things I shouldn't know about certain people, mostly strangers. Clear details about their deceased loved ones come unwillingly with a sense of certainty. You had a blue-eyed sister and a big white dog. Even if I see such things, I feel like floating, profound peace and an urge to speak. These moments bring details, closure, and peace to the receiver. I sometimes sense living people too. However, afterward, I'm physically drained, still sick. I'm trying to block it. My family is also sensitive, but with a Catholic background, they're afraid and don't talk about it. Some saw darker things or premonitions. What's going on? Is it sickness related? Is it spirits communicating? Is it the mind? I enjoy my daily practice, but I'm no deep meditator. Thank you.
And there's another lady like that comes to my monastery. She's never very healthy. And every time that she does have some, what do you call it, like a vision or understanding, a lot of the time it's true, not always true.
No, not always.
But sometimes it is. Sometimes that's kind of weird. I try and discourage her because it takes up so much of her energy. It gets drained. So I just ask her, so don't do too much of that. Every now and again you do feel really drained, just please stay in your apartment and just don't come out for a few days.
One thing that might help, because I'm also really sensitive, and it's not that I get absolute details, but I can pick up a lot about people, is that I just need to stay embodied more. Because quite often we think we're feeling another person, but we're actually feeling our own response to them, if that makes sense. And by just staying much more centered in your body, you'll come to know that there is a boundary. There is a difference between you and that person. You're not completely intermeshed. And I would actually, if it's tiring, you not offer that information to the person. Even if you think it might help them, it might drain you. And it might encourage you to feel that that's a way you can help them. And then it will keep you kind of extroverted. So I would say try to stay within yourself. And if you have any kind of sensitivity, read your own body and mind, and read where your body might need extra metta or extra kindness, and where you're straining it, and where you're kind of going beyond your own well-being in some way. During the way inside, I experience some general attacks from the hindrances. It will feel like something will pull me out of meditation. If the mind can stay with the breath or piti sukha, it is like it's going deeper down. It's like doorsteps. Is it the right direction?
During the way inside. Okay.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, I don't know if this is the case for you, but sometimes with the piti sukha, what I feel is like a kind of feeling like the body is kind of sinking down and sort of almost falling through the floor. And it's a kind of change in perception when the mind starts to get freer. I don't know if that might be part of it. It might be just the way you imagine going inside, and that's why you kind of relate it to doorsteps. It does sound as though you're going in the right direction. If something's pulling you out, then it's more likely to be what Ajahn Brahm calls the outflowings, like the asavas. That's the way you call them, isn't it? That there's things that pull you out into the realm of the senses. And of course, the hindrances are completely connected and bound up in the realm of the senses. So yeah, if you're going towards the Piti Sukha, staying with the Piti Sukha, then it will take you deeper inside. Sounds okay to me. I really appreciate Ajahn Brahm's comment on being rebellious with deadlines. I think in the modern times, meeting deadlines is valued more than the actual quality of work or how it's being done. Nevertheless, it would be great if we can do both, meet the deadline and also produce high quality ethical work. How can one exhibiting mild ADHD symptoms, such as difficulty maintaining directed or effortful attention and thus managing time, succeed in this endeavor?
I don't know.
I think ADHD, I don't have a lot of experience with people with ADHD, but what I have learned so far is that it can be really helpful for people to, and this can be for anyone, especially if you're a bit forgetful generally in life, is to have all the things you need to do in one place on some kind of chart, in some kind of system, so that you can kind of prioritize certain things. And if they've not been done, move them over to the next box, and you know that they're the priority for the next day. And you keep on shifting your priorities in that way, but you keep it all in one place. At least that's what I've experienced from living with people with ADHD, that if it's in different places, they say, yes, I have written it down, but I don't know where I've written it down, if it's in this book or that book, or if it was like 2 weeks ago. So maybe having some kind of system, and you can look this kind of stuff up online, you can learn about how to manage things better. And I know one of my friends has a close friend with ADHD who's in a very high functioning role as some kind of manager, and she's found a way to work with her own mind. So treat your own mind as a unique mind. It won't be the same as anybody else's mind, not even other people with ADHD. Everybody's unique. So just try to learn how your mind works and perhaps communicate that to your boss. And tell them that you're really trying to achieve both, but sometimes the deadline might not be met, and you hope that the high quality ethical work can somehow compensate in a way for that. Maybe if they can also learn a little bit about where you're coming from, they'll understand it's not laziness or incompetency in any way. So I hope that can help.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add there is that if you have some important priorities, please try that programming of mindfulness. I always found that very helpful. Sometimes that somebody asks me, can you please give me a call at 3 p.m. No, tomorrow afternoon. And if it's really important, I close my eyes, I will ring that person at 3 p.m. I will ring that person at 3 p.m. I will ring that person at 3 p.m. And I trust that so well that I just then forget about it. And then about 2:30 or 2:45, oh yeah, I've got to ring that person today. And it makes life very easy. I don't have to record it down in any place. It's in my own mind. And it's wonderful to be able to trust that.
You might also want to write it down if you have ADHD. I think so.
I don't know ADHD whether that will still work.
Yeah, it might help.
Yeah.
But my phone forgot to do that.
Got even to say it.
Yeah.
I got to. Okay.
Someone asked her to do that. Actually, they asked her to kind of say a few things before they met a person, and anyway, remember a few details, and
okay,
they couldn't remember to do it. It depends, doesn't it? Thanks to this retreat, I can put a name to the powerful experience I had some weeks ago in meditation, feeling of me turning into a tunnel filled with very bright light, losing the feeling of having a body, feeling like there was nobody here anymore, just observing the experience as just experience. Then after some minutes, fear arose and the sense of self returned. I didn't know at the time that this was a nimitta and thought, what on earth was that? After coming out, it felt like my consciousness had been altered. When I woke the next morning, I still was in a state of the deepest peace I'd ever felt. The experience has left a strong impression up till now. My question is, are there any markers to recognize if this was a jhana as well as a nimitta? And is it actually worthwhile trying to find out? Thank you very much.
I would actually say no, don't find out. Just go there again. You've been there once. So the mind would recognize that this is a safe place and just let it happen. But when you get close to experiencing these things again, be careful of like desire, longing, wanting. Say, oh, it comes again, yay! And then you blow it. I don't know how many times that happens to meditators, good meditators. And then sometimes you think, oh yeah, oh dear. That is just like when you get so close, that game of snakes and ladders is a beautiful simile. When you get so close to the last square, and that's where the longest snake is, and you have to go all the way down and start going on, carrying on again. So don't celebrate, don't get excited until after you come out of these deep meditations.
It just strikes me too, we haven't mentioned this much, but as well as this sort of feeling of, or kind of wish to understand how to re-experience these things, I think it's also very helpful to re-remember them in your own mind, and especially to re-remember the insights that came up. Like, so don't lose that insight, because that's a really precious insight, this idea of how it feels when the sense of self is diminished in that way. Try to reconnect with that and keep that insight alive. Please, could you clarify the different forms that a nimitta may present itself as, and is it possible to enter first jhana without experiencing a nimitta?
That's a good question. It's easier if you've had experienced the nimitta. Light nimittas, they're the ones which are really recommended. But it's possible to enter a jhana kind of without a nimitta. You didn't pay much attention to it. You went fast, and you can get into a first jhana, I would say, without a nimitta or without recognizing a nimitta being there. However, it's much easier if you know what nimittas are. You can recognize them and allow them to be a very important vehicle for you.
I think it's also possible to think you've entered a jhana without a nimitta, but actually it's just very, very strong piti sukha. In other words, it's some of the jhana factors, but you don't have the ekaggata, you don't have the unification of the mind and its object. Dear Ajahns, coming from a Goenka tradition, let me answer this one maybe. How can I know if I'm approaching correctly for jhana development when attention naturally expands to the breath, from the breath to body sensations? Right now, I'm setting the intention on allowing this expansion, or should I stay solely on the breath? Thank you so much for your guidance. So one very, very simplistic way that I could kind of describe the difference between my practice now and with Goenka is that with the Goenka tradition, the aim is to start feeling the body and the feelings in the body arising and passing away, and even completely dissolving very, very fast, so that you're aware of the constant flow of experience being kind of ephemeral and nothing you can hold on to. And the way that we develop that kind of wisdom is by first developing some samadhi through anapana meditation. But then fairly quickly, without having to be very deep with anapana, we move to the body sensation. So it almost feels like that's the natural progress. And what I realized with the samadhi practice is I had to kind of reverse the whole thing and almost come out of feeling body sensations, and certainly come out of feeling them dissolving and analyzing it in any way with the mind, and really get into the breath. And as I was saying, I think in the Sutta class yesterday, to get into the breath as a very simple idea of incoming breath, outgoing breath, whole of the breath, calm breath, and then eventually the piti that arises with the breath, not allowing myself to analyze the breath in any way or to go into detail with the breath, but just simple breath. So it's a process of simplifying the mind, I think, rather than actually allowing it to expand. So being with the breath, but in a way that's very natural, very simple, and not over focusing either. So for the samadhi practice that I kind of shifted to after practicing with Goenka, It was much more about establishing the causes for the breath to arise naturally and establishing a lot of joy in the mind. So I feel that one way to do this, to make that shift, is to practice a lot of metta meditation until the point where you're really experiencing that beautiful piti sukha, even before going on to the breath. This can be very, very helpful to make the breath more interesting to stay with, because sometimes it can feel really boring in the beginning if you're used to doing the meditation with the bodily sensations, which is full of, I have to say, is full of insight. And it's very fascinating to see how this whole thing is arising and passing away, and the emotions and the thoughts are just like dissolving all the time. It's really quite interesting. And for me, in the beginning, the breath was boring. So I don't know if that helps you where you are, but I think that can help you to be just with the breath and try and resist the urge to kind of allow expansion or anything like that. Just stay present with the simple breath. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for me to know where you are with your breath meditation, but yeah, just with a bit of understanding from where you came from. I hope that can help a bit. Dear Ajahns, my father's recently been diagnosed with a tumor and is very worried. I live far away and can only visit once a year at most. Could you kindly advise if there are specific chants or practices I can do for him? I hope he recovers soon and remains healthy. So I would say sharing your metta and also dedicating the practice that you do to him. Also, I have 3 teenage children who are beginning to show changes as they grow. Besides chanting metta and practicing meditation with them, although they prefer reading their devices more than meditation, of course, are there any other teachings or practices you would recommend in order to raise them as kind, calm, and wholesome young people? Thanks for your kind guidance.
Okay, it's lovely if they can spend time with your father who has the cancer, because your father and your children, as grandparents to grandchildren, it's usually they have a very easy relationship together. And after a while, you'll find some of your children will surprise you with how much kindness they have to their grandfather.
Mm.
So I would try and encourage them to, can you look after granddad today?
But he lives far away.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Can't they go and visit?
They can only visit once a year. Can they Skype and Zoom?
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
That way you can actually chant some metta for him. I did that for a friend that was dying, you know, Rita.
Oh, yes, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was doing that every day for the last month or so of her life, that she would just log in and I would just chant metta for her, and she feels so touched
Oh, yeah.
by that. Because it's really powerful sometimes to chant, you know, it's kind of bigger than words. It goes beyond personalities and kind of the individual relationship that you have, and it just conveys an emotion of care.
And the fact that you were doing it so regularly.
Yeah.
And she appreciated that enormously.
That's something you could try. You know, with children, I know I see this question quite a lot from Buddhist mothers who really want their children to come on the right track. I think a lot of it is not worrying about them. One of the biggest, most healing, most empowering kind of attitudes that an elder has had towards me is not to worry and to trust me and to have confidence that I'm good and that I'm going to find my path. I didn't get that so much from my parents. My mother was very worried about me all the time, even when I was getting straight A's. It's like, oh, well, you might not get one next time. For goodness sake, is it not enough that I'm doing this every time? But when a person's really wise, the kind of unconditional love they give is a sense of assurance and confidence in your own ability to find your way. So I think that could be very, very grounding for your children, trusting they are kind, calm, and wholesome young people. They might go a little bit off track for a while, seemingly, but you've brought them up with strong ethics and they'll always come back to that.
I remember my poor mother. My father already passed away. And when I was 17, I'd already got a place at Cambridge and a lot of free time. And so I had a guitar, a backpack, and went hitchhiking over North Africa. My mother said, just make sure you look after yourself.
It's amazing.
Yeah, she trusted me so much.
Yeah.
And sometimes, would your mother have ever allowed you to go hitchhiking over North Africa at 17 just with a backpack? Not in a backpack, sorry. a guitar and a bedroll.
I did go to Israel at 18
Okay.
without very much. And then
Yeah.
I went to India at 19. But Lao, I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it was an allowing or can't stop me.
No, my mother just allowed me, and
That's really nice.
I was always sort of writing to her saying everything's going okay, everything's going okay.
That's what I did too. My mum had to wait for weeks at a time to get these little aerograms through the post. There was no way to call her. There was no internet, nothing. And
Yeah.
now I look back and I think, wow, that would have been really tough. She wouldn't have known where I was from time to time. And I was away for like nearly 15 years. So, but now she's very happy. Now she can see what I was doing and that I have something to offer, even to her. And my parents recently came to visit me here, and it wasn't just that they felt proud to see what I've achieved or what the community has achieved, but it was also that they benefited from their stay, and they benefited from the little bit of meditation they did, to the point that sometimes they just continued even after they could have stopped. So it's amazing how proud parents become, but you've got to give your kids freedom to find out who they are. If you're trying to make them into the way you think they should be, they'll just take that as a kind of criticism. Thank you for another brilliant retreat. It's not over yet.
Yeah, the best is yet to come.
Certainly made me experience what it was like associating with the wise, as in the Metta Sutta. I was so happy being in the company of the Ajahns and a group of like-minded meditators. But you're not leaving yet, are you? I'm speaking in the past tense. Just wish it was longer. Can we have more Anukampa Zoom retreats, please? So fun and insightful. Yeah, we got one tomorrow. We've got a weekend retreat. November, we've got this Scouts thing, which is actually a live one, which is a bit of an experiment on our part because we're having to arrange all the food and the recipes and the volunteers to cook. But we'll see what comes in the future. I'm sure we'll have other online ones. And if the Scout Centre works out and it's comfortable enough for everyone, because the beds are rather small, I'm warning you, it's a Scouts camp, okay? But if it works and if you enjoy it, we can potentially have more there too. So there will be more, as long as Ajahn Brahm's alive. And who knows, I might die first. I was going to say once you've gone, I can continue, but I might die first. Okay. Dear Venerables, oh, it's not over yet. Thank you for this retreat. Last year, my life was getting out of control. I was very stressed. Nothing helped. Early last week, I thought not living would be better. You've taught me something I didn't know, to be kind to myself. I feel more peaceful. If life gets hard again, can you say something that I'll recall at that moment? Thank you. May you both be enlightened. May this be your last life. Oh, I'm so glad that now you're being kinder to yourself. And please remember, if those heavy feelings ever come up again and you ever question whether it'd be better not to live, remember how you felt now at the other end of those thoughts. Remember that once you come out of that, which you always will, you're so relieved not to have taken your life. You're so relieved. And you even may have become stronger as a result. One of the things that depression can give you is great compassion for other people who are also depressed, and great compassion in general. It's like you've allowed yourself to be broken open, and now you can connect with other people. You can show up in a more real and vulnerable way, and the kindness goes much deeper because you realize how important that kindness is. So I would say, remember there's a purpose to it. Even when you feel despairing and depressed, there is a purpose to it, and you will get through it. You can also call on community, call on friends, come to the teachings online. This retreat is not the end of the Dhamma teachings you receive. That they continue, they're there, and get hold of a guided meditation. But most of all, I think, just remember how relieved you were not to have done it last time, and that things are going to change. Anything else?
That's great.
Okay. Gosh, are we on the last question? We are over time, so that's probably a good thing. Somebody did write a long dream that they had, but I'm just going to share that with Ajahn afterwards because it wasn't a question, it was just a long dream.
Okay.
Dear Ajahns, what does equanimity exactly mean? Is one indifferent? No. Or aloof? No. Is one in a non-reactive state? Sort of. There must still be metta and compassion? I would say yes. Would you like to go into more detail?
No, I agree with that. And it's like so beautiful, the equanimity. That's why I don't really like that as a translation
Yeah.
for upekkha. I kind of prefer contentment. It's much more full, much more beautiful, much more rich. It's not just like a piece of bread, without any marmalade or butter or.
Cons.
I don't put cotton on pizza.
No, don't get ideas.
With baked beans or something. But it's richer than just equanimity. It's beautiful. That's why sometimes they make the word upekkha sukha, the joy, the bliss of equanimity.
Yeah. It's actually a more sublime kind of happiness than even the metta, compassion, and mudita. And the simile I really love, actually, it's from this little book by, I forget who's written it. It's two of those older monks who've probably passed away. It's either Nyanaponika and there's a few of those monks who lived in Sri Lanka. They've written this beautiful little book about the Brahma Viharas, and in there there's a simile of metta being like the love that a mother has for her child when it's small. Just a general state of love and acceptance and unconditional kindness. Compassion is like the mother's love to the child that's sick. It's the same love, but it responds differently to a sick child than a healthy child. And then the mudita is like a mother's love to the child that is now succeeding and doing well in life. And the upekkha is like the mother's love when the child leaves home. So the love is still there, but there's more of a sense of perspective. There's more a sense that the child will meet their own karma, they'll have their ups and downs, they'll go through life with the resources they have that you've done your best to give them, but eventually they have to find their path. And that's a kind of sense of upekkha. And I remember having a very strong experience of metta, compassion, and upekkha all in kind of one long meditation sitting once. And it went from general loving kindness to a friend. And then as I changed the object from this particular friend to a person in Myanmar who had been my supporter and who'd had a very difficult life, it just changed in its tone to something I could recognize. I didn't change anything. The metta was just flowing, but I could recognize this emotion as compassion, which surprised me because I didn't really intentionally connect with the suffering she'd had. I wasn't thinking about that at all, but it was a different quality to the love. And then it changed into a sense of upekkha, and it was as if the mind just opened and expanded, and there was this sense of wisdom joined in with it, a wisdom that the world goes its way, but it was still very connected somehow. So for me, it's something that has a sense of perspective that's very wide and very broad, and also kind of cool and quiet compared to some of the earlier Brahma Viharas. This is not equanimity at the level of fourth jhana, but it was still a very powerful experience for me. So it's certainly not something you hold or you make non-reactive. Like in the Goenka practice, we did develop equanimity, but I remember it being taught as kind of don't react, don't react. And in a sense, although you could develop genuine equanimity, a lot of it in the beginning was just trying not to react. And that's not really what equanimity as a Brahma Vihara or certainly as fourth jhana means. So we should never be indifferent. Indifference is a kind of, almost a kind of hostility, I would say. And aloof is disconnected, too disconnected. Oh, another question came in. Shall we?
Long or short?
Okay, a small one. Ven Candā, you mentioned one can mistake strong piti sukha for jhana, but missing the factor of ekaggata. How does one in this position specifically cultivate ekaggata? So you don't. Again, it's just that it's unhelpful to start thinking you've arrived somewhere you haven't yet. It's unhelpful to be measuring at all in this process of deepening your meditation. So if strong piti sukha arises, you don't have to think anything. You just go with that piti sukha, allow it to be, and over time it will settle and the mind will become unified around that piti sukha. That will become the sole object of the mind. So it'll happen. It also happens through the nimitta arising. That's a sign that the mind's becoming unified. So you don't have to specifically cultivate anything. The main thing that I'm pointing to is not to mistake lesser states or lighter states of jhana factors or piti sukha for jhana when it's not yet fully developed. Because if you do, it's not about putting a label on yourself or feeling you've got something. It's just that you'll miss the deeper benefits that jhana can bring because you won't have fully abandoned the 5 hindrances. So you'll miss the real deep and juicy stuff. So that's, I think, what I meant.
Right.
Very good.
Excellent.
Excellent. And well done. And sadhu. Should we call sadhu cool? Sadhu. Okay. Cool. Cool. It doesn't sound very cool. Probably doesn't look very cool. An old monk and an aging nun. I can't say old.
Say awesome instead. Awesome.
Going cool.
Awesome.
All right then. Is that any cooler?
Yeah, I don't know.
Excellent. Oh, I did promise to tell you about tomorrow afternoon because I have jig